Hi, it's Steph, and we're at the Home Depot, and it is officially fall. They have lots of beautiful and seasonal, colorful annuals, pumpkins, and decorative gourds. The fall planted bulbs are in, and they have shrubs and perennials for fall planting. So let's go ahead and take a look at the September inventory at the Home Depot. If you love decorative stacking pumpkins, they have the specialty pumpkins here at the Home Depot. So these are $12.98. They're also known as Cinderella pumpkins. They're really beautiful, especially in a fall porch arrangement. And they have these here, different shades of orange and creams and whites. So $10.98 for the specialty pumpkins and $12.98 for the stacking pumpkins. The sugar pumpkins are $4.48, and they look really good. They have beautiful stems on them. I know it's silly, but I look for the pretty stem when I choose my pumpkins. They also have some large white pumpkins for $11.98. The bushel baskets of mums are $24.98, and you can keep that bushel basket to reuse next year. These make a really pretty fall display as well. And the millet is $21.98. Now this will send up these plume blooms that are dark in color. You can actually see it already starting here. And they also make a very pretty decorative element in the fall. This is a really pretty annual that I see this time of year. It's Plectranthus, and the variety is Mona Lavender. And it is a great plant to have some pollinators continue to visit you until the end of the season. You can see that the blooms are open in the center. They're kind of tubular, which means that the rest of the hummingbirds, if they haven't already migrated, would really enjoy that. And these come in a decorative hanging basket for $19.98. Really pretty color. Light lavender purple, but the foliage also is beautiful. It's very waxy, and it actually looks like faux foliage to me. This Dragon's Breath Celosia is an absolute favorite of mine when it comes to these fall annuals. It is gorgeous. I used them in some planters last year. My mom has them in some planters this year. Stunning. They have these dark leaves, this gorgeous, like deep, sort of like a fuchsia colored bloom. They're really pretty. Look at that. And these are $22.98 in this decorative planter. Celosia Dragon's Breath, and they like full sun. I'm going to share a couple of mum buying tips with you. So these mums here in these decorative mumster planters, that's actually kind of cute, right? Catchy, are $12.98. But you see how they're pretty bloomed out at the moment? It might be tempting to bring these home because they look pretty, because they're all full of these gorgeous seasonal blooms, but they're not going to last very long. And mums do need a little bit of deadheading, so if you don't have the patience for that, buy one that is tightly budded so that you will get more time out of it. See how this one has this hole in the center as well? That sometimes happens from overhead watering. That's the other tip with mums. They require a good amount of water to keep the soil moist and to keep them from drying out. That will prolong the life of your mums. The best way to do that is by taking the container and sitting it in a tray or bucket of water to let it sop up the water from the bottom. They prefer bottom watering. And that is another reason why if you have them in the rain, in an exposed area like on a porch, they say it's best to kind of put it in a little bit of a hidden or covered area, because that way they won't get pummeled by the rain, which will cause that hole in the center, but also it'll keep it a bit drier so it doesn't start getting discolored flowers and fungal disease. So those are some tips for growing mums. This is a really beautiful color. These are adorable in a white pumpkin planter. $12.98 for these as well. This is the type of mum that I would bring home. One that is completely budded like this, maybe some that are just starting to open, so you can kind of get an idea for the color. If you know the color is a deal breaker for you, I know some people prefer certain colors of mums, but this is the best way, in my opinion, to buy mums, a tightly budded form. They have 6.5-inch mum containers for $4.98, and they come in several colors. I really like the pinks and the whites. Look at this one. It's beautiful. It has a little hint of pink to it, and the oranges are gorgeous also. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really buy mums that often. I think in the last several years, I've bought them once. Last year was one of those years because I found a white one that was really pretty, and I you know, couldn't resist. But in general, I prefer other seasonal perennials more so, and then I can take them out of the containers and put them in my garden. And some decorative fall planters that have an arrangement in them. These are $22.98 for a fall combo in a decorative planter. This one has some pentas, some decorative peppers, and some mums. There are some with mums and the decorative kales and cabbages. Fun fact about these decorative kales and cabbages, the cooler the weather gets, the more colorful they get. So they'll get more purple and pink in the center when the weather starts to cool off more. But you can either buy one of these already made, or you can use them as inspiration and pick up some components to do your own fall planters. Some pansies, it's a pretty one. Pansies are a great option for fall and spring because they love cool temperatures. And some beautiful annual rudbeckia. Now these are so showy and so pretty. Once the sunflowers have tired out, these are a great alternative for this sunny bloom this time of year. So this is a rudbeckia that is an annual, which means that in most zones it will not return next year. So you're buying this just for fall decorating. And it attracts butterflies, deer resistant, and dwarf size, so it is shorter in stature. And it says that it gets to be 8 to 36 inches in height, 8 to 24 inch spacing. So not too small unless the foliage kind of stays low, and then as the blooms grow, they can get pretty tall. And these are $21.98 in this decorative planter. And petunias, did you know that petunias also love the cool temperatures of fall? So they usually show up pretty early in the spring, and that is because they do like cool temps. So even if your petunias have taken a lull towards the hottest part of summer, they should be picking up now again for another final flush. But some beautiful fall colors here, some shades of burgundy and this kind of like a golden orange color. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So these are $22.98 for these decorative planters. There are also 6-inch fall annuals that you can pick up to make your own containers. So they have some really pretty pansies. Look at that one. And burgundy, as well as decorative peppers. These are in the Vigoro container for $4.98. And they also have some of the decorative kales and cabbages. And some perennials. This one in particular is a great late season bloomer. It is bluebeard, also known as Caryopteris. And this one happens to have a golden foliage. It's called Gold Crest Bluebeard. Now these like a very well-draining soil. It's very drought tolerant once it's established. They do best in full sun, but it does say that it can take part sun, and blooms late summer through fall. And it is hardy in zone 6 through 9, grows 28 to 36 inches in height and in width. And these are $24.98. You can see that this one is still pretty tightly budded, has lots of buds coming onto it, and just started blooming in this really pretty purple color. The Home Depot house containers are still on sale for 2 for $15. These are their #1 size container. Now this is an excellent ground cover. This is a perennial ground cover, which means it'll die back at the end of the season and return next spring. Bugleweed, and it's also known as a juga. This variety is the Bronze Beauty. You get this beautiful foliage that spreads horizontally to form a mat or a ground cover. And in the spring, they pop up these really pretty blue blooms. You can kind of almost see it in that photo right here. It's a great one. And the deer and rabbit keep away from it in my garden. Ground covers are a great way to use less mulch over time, because mulch it can be expensive, but it's also very labor intensive. And it retains moisture, suppresses weeds, so it's a great alternative to the traditional mulch. So this variety here, Bronze Beauty, it blooms late spring. Most of them do bloom late spring, and it's only 6 inches in height, and it says 12-inch spacing, but they will continue to spread because they spread through runners. And it is hardy in zones 3 through 8. And right on the side of it is a really pretty blanket flower, or gaillardia, that actually a viewer brought to my attention recently. And it is the mango variety. Look how pretty this is. It's really kind of soft orange. It looks exactly like the flesh of a mango. This is the Gaillardia Spin Top Mango Compact Habit, covered with glowing flowers of yellow, orange, and peach. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, and it likes sun. It's really pretty. It actually looks beautiful paired with this buddleia right behind it, the butterfly bush. This color purple, look at that. Such a pretty combo. Now this plant, even when it's not in bloom, the seed pods or the heads on it are gorgeous. Look at this. Looks like little balls. And the foliage has a little bit of a kind of a bluish hint to it. Here's a Caryopteris that's more in bloom, so you can see what it looks like as it opens up. In one of those 2 for $15 containers. So this one is, it's just doesn't tell us the variety. It's just listed as Caryopteris, bluebeard, mounded habit, deer resistant, which is also another bonus of these, and drought tolerant. There are still lots of pretty coneflowers. Look at these. These are one of my favorite perennials for the garden, and they have a very fall vibe to them too, right? Mine typically bloom in July, and while I still get some sporadic reblooming, my big flush is in July. So my guess is that these are blooming here in September because they came from a greenhouse somewhere. But the color on these is gorgeous. It's the Artisan Soft Orange coneflower. It gets to be 24 to 32 inches in height and needs 30-inch spacing. Water when dry, and that's really important because coneflowers are a very drought tolerant plant. They don't want a ton of water. In fact, if they sit in soil that stays moist for too long, they can start to rot at the crown and you can lose your plant. So that is something you should know about growing coneflowers. They're deer resistant, but the bunnies will sometimes eat them up to the point that they can reach, so you should spray them when they first emerge with some liquid fence deer and rabbit or some kind of repellent to keep them away. But these are in the Vigoro containers, which I'm pretty sure have also gone on sale 2 for $15. And some asters, another really pretty plant for this time of year. Now asters, most varieties are perennial, but they also like a really dry or well-draining soil in full sun. I have a variety that I planted in a container last season, the Nova Belgi, that did come back for me this year. And these are $6.98, and they get to be 10 to 48 inches in height and need 24 to 36 inch spacing. Water when dry, and it has a rounded habit. They look very similar to mums, but typically the colors are going to be different, where they're usually more of this kind of like a lavender, purple pink, or a straight purple. Some 15-inch decorative whiskey barrel planters with mums for $34.98. And if you're getting ready to put up a privacy fence or a living fence, look at this. They have tons of arborvitae in stock, and these are great options for those types of projects. They have the emerald green arborvitae. There's also the green giant, which has a looser habit and gets a lot bigger. I have a video on my channel that I can link below on the key differences between these two arborvitaes and some growing tips. And another really great shrub for late season interest, the Abelia. Look at this. It has these tiny but shiny green leaves, a red stem, and they get tons of these little bell-shaped blooms that look very much like the Weigela blooms we get in the spring that the pollinators love. Even the bracts have a bit of a, like a peachy coral color to them. Tons of buds on this one. They can get pretty large. Some of them I've seen 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. Some can get a little bit bigger, but in general, if you are looking for seasonal color and interest that carries you through the fall, an Abelia would be a great shrub to consider. The Abelia is in a number 3 container for $26.98. And if you love a shrub with moody foliage, which I absolutely do, this is a really pretty hydrangea. This is the Eclipse hydrangea by First Editions. It's a macrophylla or mop head type hydrangea. Look at the blooms. When it blooms, it does have this really pretty rosy pink coloring. Looks gorgeous in contrast to all of the green in the garden. You can see these have faded now, and they have that really pretty aged fall coloring. And they're $29.98 for a number 2 container. The size on these gets to be 3 to 5 feet tall and wide, and they are hardy in zones 5 through 9. They like morning sun and afternoon shade, and that is going to be the case with most macrophylla type hydrangeas. Morning sun is going to be softer, so anytime that you can plant part shade, part sun plants in morning sun and afternoon shade, they're going to do a lot better. Now they only have one of these left here at my store, and I can see why. Look at the fall color on this Itea. This is the Little Henry, and in the summer you'll get these fragrant bottle brush type white blooms, and in the fall it gets this fiery red color. It is gorgeous. It's also a plant that can take a little bit of moisture, so if you have an area in your garden that holds on to a little water, this might be a good option. So the Sweet Spire Little Henry by Proven Winners is a petite shrub, and it gets to be, let's see, 2 to 3 feet tall and 2 to 3 feet wide. Hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 9. Fragrant summer flowers attracts the butterflies, and as you can see, this gorgeous fall coloring. Little Henry Itea is $29.98, and while the store only has one in stock, you can order plants on HomeDepot.com. And in my experience, at least, it has usually been free shipping. I don't know if that's changed, but something to look into. And I've had really good luck with ordering hydrangeas from HomeDepot.com. So if you didn't know that that was an option, something to think about. And another shrub that's known to have fall interest is the viburnum. And they have a couple of new varieties here this week. They have the proven winners Blue Muffin, Arrowwood viburnum. And you can see that the fruit that they get look very similar to blueberries. That is beautiful in mass like that. Look at that. Has a compact habit. It gets 5 to 7 feet tall and wide, which some viburnums can get quite large, so that is considered more compact. And it is hardy in USDA growing zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a native species, no pruning needed, and it gets fall fruit and glossy foliage. And it turns shades of burgundy and orange when the color change happens. And white flowers in spring. So I love these multi-season interest shrubs. You'll get those white flowers in spring, you'll get the blue fruit in the summer, and then you'll get the beautiful foliage in the fall. And these are in a number 2 container for $29.98. And right on the side is another really pretty viburnum. Look at the foliage on this one. So they come in so many different leaf types, viburnums. This one has a really shiny leaf, and it is the Brandywine. Look at that colorful fruit, and look at that fall color. Isn't that stunning? So pretty. So this one likes sun or part shade. It is hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets to be 5 to 6 feet tall and wide, so it's also pretty compact in terms of viburnums, and it gets spring and fall color. So spring you'll get the blooms, and in the fall you get the color. Look at that. So pretty. Now this one looks like it just holds fruit. I don't know if it actually blooms. Oh yes, it does. Look at that. Viburnum's white spring flowers produce unique pink and blue berries in fall, and then the fruit pops against a backdrop of colorful fall foliage, deer resistant and shade tolerant. And the Brandywine is in a number 2 container for $29.98. And if you're looking to plant a decorative landscape feature tree this fall, the Japanese maple is a great option. This variety I actually have in my own landscape. It is a lace leaf Japanese maple, and this one is called Garnet. Now the Garnet is a burgundy colored Japanese maple. These have more of a green hint to them because they were probably shaded in transport. But once they get a good amount of sun, they will start turning this red coloring. In general, most Japanese maples prefer a part sun location. If you give them morning sun, afternoon shade, they'll be really happy. But over time, they can acclimate and take more sun. So here is the information on this one. The Japanese maple Garnet says part sun, attractive foliage, low maintenance, 10 to 12 feet in height, and 8 to 10 foot spacing. Hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And these Japanese maples are in a number 3 container for $79.98. And another tree that provides really pretty spring color with some blooms is the crabapple. And as you get into the later part of summer and into fall, they get these crabapples, or these fruits that the birds absolutely love. And they look really pretty as well. This one does not have a tag, so I can't identify the variety, but they are in a number 5 container for $84.98. And as we head into those colder winter months where all of your perennials go dormant and you want something pretty to look out in the landscape, adding some evergreen interest is a great idea. This is one of my favorite low maintenance evergreen shrubs. It has this beautiful blue-gray coloring. It will get the best coloring in full sun. It likes a drier, well-draining soil, and it is the Blue Star Juniper. They are deer resistant and they're pretty low growing, so they make a great option for a front of the border evergreen. I've had mine planted for upwards of 12 years now, and it's about 4 by 4 in diameter and only about 12 to 18 inches in height, and very hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. These are in a 3.78 liter container for $16.98. And another arborvitae that I find really interesting is the DeGroote's spire. And what I like about it is that even though it's one tree, it looks like it has multiple growth tips at the top, giving the illusion that there are a grouping of trees. And they're also pretty compact. So this variety says that it gets to be about 8 feet in height, but this is usually a 10-year garden size. Over time, they can get a bit taller than that. And it needs 24 to 36 inch spacing, hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, with most arborvitaes, it does say to maintain a moderately moist soil, so it doesn't want to sit in water, but it wants a soil that's consistently moist but well draining. And that is especially the case for any newly planted arborvitae. Not giving them ample water is the quickest way to get them to brown up. And some varieties are also not deer resistant, so that is something to look into. I am not familiar with whether or not the DeGroote's spire is deer resistant, but if you grow it in your garden, let me know. And these say that they like part sun. Arborvitae can take part sun. They'll do better and be fuller with more sun. Sometimes they get a little sparse if they don't get enough sun. And these are in a number 3 container for $29.98. Now, in the beginning, they might look like they just have, you know, one growth tip, but as they mature, they start to put on more of those individual tips at the top. And some hinoki. I absolutely love hinokis. I have a few in my garden, probably 5 or 6 at this point. This variety is the Coster's False Cypress Costeri. I actually do have this one. It's stayed relatively compact for me. I really love the shape and texture of this tree and or shrub. And let's see how big it gets. It says it needs 36 to 48 inch spacing and the same for height. It is evergreen. It'll maintain this form and color all year round. Now, sometimes you will notice as you head into the fall that some of your evergreens will start getting a little bit of brown in the center. That is normal. It's just like a type of shed that they do. You can just go through and kind of clean them off like this by wiggling your fingers in them, and then they'll push out a bunch of new growth. So don't be fearful of that. In most cases, it's just a normal shed that takes place inside your evergreens. And these are number 2 for $24.98. And look at these beautiful plants. These are a perennial called Nephofia or red hot poker, and they are gorgeous. So not only are the blooms really striking when they are in bloom, but the foliage is also like a grassy texture. So even when it's not in bloom, it looks like you have an ornamental grass. I have a couple of these in my garden now, and I really love them. The pollinators also love them because of the blooms having this tubular shape. They get their beaks up in there, especially the hummingbirds, and they adore it. This is a really cool perennial. So this one is in one of these decorative planters for $15.98 here at the Home Depot. It's called the Papaya Popsicle Nephofia. And these do like full sun and a moderately moist but well-draining soil. They get to be 12 inches in width, but that is the foliage. With the blooms, they get a lot taller, upwards of 24 to 30 inches. And they need 18-inch spacing. Hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit and hardy in zones 6 through 9. Also in these decorative planters is the catmint, and this one is called Persian Blue, and these are $15.98. This is a wonderful perennial. For the front of the border, it is long blooming, the pollinators love it, and it has a minty fragrance. So the Persian Blue catmint wants full sun. All catmints like full sun, otherwise they'll splay in the center and not bloom as well. It blooms mid-spring through fall, and you'll get repeat blooming if you deadhead it, which means once the blooms are spent, you can follow the stem down, cut it, and it'll keep pushing out new blooms. And it attracts butterflies and pollinators. Needs 12-inch spacing, and it is hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So very hardy. And look how pretty that purple looks with those orange blooms of the Nephofia. Such a pretty combination. Some more 2 for $15 perennials in the number 1 container by Home Depot. These are hosta. Now, hosta for me are like deer salad, so I don't grow them in my garden, but they have many different patterns and foliage colors, which makes them a great option to add color to a shady garden. And they bloom. You can see this one has a bloom stalk. This is what hosta blooms look like. They have these lavender purple, sometimes they're white colored blooms. The pollinators love them, but if you don't like them, you just follow the stem down to the base of the foliage and cut them off. They're also very hardy plants and super easy to divide. In fact, you can just look at the container. In many cases, they looks like there could be more than one plant, and right off the bat, as soon as you buy them, you can divide them into multiples. Speaking of plants that pollinators love, Crocosmia. The hummingbirds love this as well. Another plant that has a grassy texture, looks very similar to an iris, and then you get these blooms that have sort of this kind of hanging, cascading habit. And they come in shades of reds and oranges. It's actually difficult to even film it because it is so bright. But it is in the Home Depot house brand containers. This is a number 2 container for $14.98. It is drought tolerant and deer resistant and has an upright growth habit. Likes full sun. Hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And this variety is the Lucifer. Oh, it looks like the color pots, the number 2 color pots, are also on sale from $14.98 to now $12.88. And a perennial that no September garden should be without, and that is sedum. Such an easy care plant as long as you give it plenty of sun and a well-draining soil. They are part of the succulent family, so they hold on to moisture in their stems and in their thick waxy leaves, so they don't need a ton of water to keep them happy. They're also a pollinator magnet and a plant that gives you a really long season of interest, because even in the spring when they emerge from the soil with those shiny clumps of leaves, and then they start putting up their bloom stalks, and then the blooms will open up in the fall, so you get so many months of getting to enjoy these beautiful blooms. The pollinators are all over them all the time. This still has a ton of buds to open up. This variety is the Autumn Joy, and like I said, they do like full sun. You can see how they look in drifts. They're super easy to divide as well, and if you're planting it and a stem falls off, just shove it into the soil. It'll start to root and create a whole new plant for you. Deer resistant, drought tolerant, clumping in growth habit, and it blooms early summer through fall is when it provides interest. 16 to 24 inches in height and needs 15 to 18 inch spacing. Hardy down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. A question I often get about sedum is, why does my sedum split in the middle? That could be for 2 reasons. 1, it's not getting enough sun. 2, it's getting too much water. These do not need a ton of water, and they don't need a fertilizer. Very low maintenance plant. Here is a lower growing variety of sedum. This is the Abidor. Let me show you. Also very pretty. This one gets to be only 16 inches in height and needs 10 to 15 inch spacing. They're also very hardy, zones 4 through 9. Blooms late summer through fall, plant in full sun, and prefers well-drained soil. This one has a little bit of a pink coloring to the tips of the foliage as well. And the blooms are more dispersed and smaller, as you can see here, versus those large bloom heads you get on the Autumn Joy. All of the sedums are also in these number 2 colored pots, and they are marked down from $14.98 to $12.98. And cone flowers galore. There are tons of varieties of cone flowers, as you can see here, and the Vigoro perennials are also on sale 2 for $15. I know that I mentioned it when we were outside the garden center, and yeah, I can confirm that here. Now, sales do vary by store and location, so you would have to check at your store to see if they are running the same special, but typically at the end of the season, you will see them start to mark down perennials and shrubs, so keep an eye out, because not only is it the perfect time to do planting, but you can also score some really great end of season deals. Look at these cone flowers. They have the Cheyenne Spirit, they have the Powwow White and Powwow Pink. Just so many gorgeous varieties, and they all like to be grown the same way. Well draining soil and full sun. And heuchera or coral bell, a beautiful foliage plant, also adds a lot of color to a shady spot in the garden. Some varieties, specifically the ones with the darker and brighter red foliage like this, can take a little bit more sun. In fact, I love to use these in front porch displays in fall, and then when I'm done with them in the container, I can plant them in my landscape. Now, I will say that heucheras and coral bells tend to do better for me in containers than in the ground. In the ground, I find they get a little bit smaller every year. I haven't quite figured out how to grow them well yet. This variety is the Carnival Rose Granita. It likes part sun, and it does bloom. They send up bloom stalks, which again, you can leave if you like them. The pollinators like them, or you can follow the stem down and cut them off. And these are in the Vigoro container, so they would also be $2 for $15. and some fall planted spring blooming bulbs. Now I will tell you that there has not been as many bulbs this year at the local box store as there have been in past years. So I'm not sure why that is. My guess is that most of you are tired by the time we get to this time of year and are not looking forward to planting bulbs. It is a little bit of a tedious process, I will say, but it is so worth it if you can plant even just a little bit to enjoy them when the spring comes in. I'm usually so thankful that I put in the effort in fall when spring arrives. And one that you can plant that will come back year after year and will naturalize, which means over time it will spread and you'll get more, are daffodils. They're also critter resistant. Nothing really bothers them. The deer and rabbits stay away from them, and they're beautiful. They come in doubles and singles. Singles meaning the traditional trumpet varieties like this that you see here, and then the ruffly ones that you see here, the doubles. So this one is a daffodil double trouble blend. You get 15 bulbs for $14.98. And this one is the daffodil and China doxa blend. It's a deer resistant blend. And you get those purple flowers as well as the yellow trumpet daffodils. And you get 30 in the pack for $14.98. So it's probably 15 of each. And it will tell you some details in the corner that they like full sun to part shade, how tall they get, and that they naturalize well. Deer and critter resistant. Some others that are deer resistant are hyacinth, both the grape hyacinth, which we'll look for, and these hyacinth. They're very showy, but very fragrant. And because they're fragrant, we humans tend to enjoy it, but critters do not, so they stay away from them. And these are also really pretty to force inside in a decorative, like a low bowl style planter. And you get 12 for $14.98. These can be irritating to your hands, so you want to wear gloves when you handle the bulbs. That's a pretty blend too, the peach with the white and the yellow. Tulips are not deer resistant, and this is why sometimes people also avoid planting them, because you have all the work to plant them and the deer will come through and eat them. So what I do when I plant tulips is I usually do them in containers because I can control the environment a little bit more, and I can also spray regularly with a deer and rabbit repellent to make sure that I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor. And here is another great bulb, beautiful, that is deer and rabbit resistant, the allium. They are part of the onion family, so the deer and rabbit stay away from them, and they have a really whimsical look to them. They have this tall stem with this ball. It's almost like a tennis ball sized bloom that kind of just floats above that stem. Gorgeous, very impactful, planted in large drifts. The foliage gets a little unsightly just as the flower is about to bloom. So what you want to do is tuck those bulbs between other perennials. Say you have hostas, that the foliage will fill out and cover that ugly foliage, right? That is a great way to plant alliums. And you get 15 for $14.98. This is the Purple Sensation, which is a really popular blend. Here is the other muscari. Now, I absolutely love this muscari. It's also pretty deer and rabbit resistant, short stature, so they're not very tall. They naturalize over time as well. So you plant a few and then they will multiply over the years if they're happy where you plant them. They also look really great in a container, specifically paired with daffodils. Look how pretty that looks together. Those blues and whites with yellow, very complementary. Now there are daffodils that bloom early season, mid, and late. So if you want to extend the show of daffodils in your garden, you can look for different varieties that bloom at different times. I grow this variety. It's absolutely beautiful. Now another tip about growing daffodils is that you can't cut back their foliage until it has dried out and died, which is why it's great to plant bulbs between other perennials that in the spring, as their foliage emerges, will cover up the dying foliage of your bulbs, like the allium foliage and the daffodil foliage. Because if you cut the foliage too early, it won't provide energy to that bulb for it to bloom beautifully next year. And then you end up with what's called blind daffodils, where they will give you foliage every year, but they won't give you blooms. And nobody wants that, right? If you're going to make the effort to plant bulbs, you want to make sure to enjoy them every year. These are gorgeous. Look at that. The tulip parrot mix. And because they're fancy, you only get 4 bulbs for $4.98. That's expensive because you have to plant probably at least a dozen in a container for it to make any kind of impact, right? Oh, this one's popular too. Has dark blooms, the Queen of the Night tulip. And again, you only get 4 for $4.98. You might be better served going online and looking at some of the bulb sellers, like Dutch Grown is one, Color Blends is another, and I'm sure there are others. I've done that in the past as well. This you get 10 for $10.98. That's $1 a bulb. That's kind of expensive if you ask me, especially considering it's a risk if you have deer in your garden. Last year I planted some bulbs that were new to me, and they were called, right here, Camassia. They were excellent. I fell in love with them and will absolutely plant these again if mine don't return this year. They're also a bulb that can handle a little bit more moisture. In general, bulbs want to be in a well-draining soil, specifically like daffodils. I have lost some because they were planted in a bed that stood too wet and they rotted. But the Camassia can handle a little bit more moisture, so I was excited to try them, and I absolutely loved the blooms. So here you get 20 in this pack for $9.98. And they naturalize well, and they're pollinator-friendly. I did see that the bunnies ate the foliage, but the blooms they left alone, which was good. Crocus, right here they have this one, the King of the Striped. That's really pretty. Crocus is one of the earliest blooming spring bulbs. There will be snow on the ground, and these cheery little flowers will try to start popping their heads up through that snow. 4 to 8 inches in height. And you get 15 for $9.98. They also have this one, which is all gone, the Orange Monarch, because it is beautiful and different. Look at that. 15 for $9.98. And there's a yellow variety, the Yellow Mammoth. So is this one taller? Oh, 4 to 8 inches, but maybe the bloom is larger. So if you're looking for some bulbs, there isn't a ton this year, I'm finding, at least in my local garden centers and box stores. It might be a good idea to take a look to see if there's something you like to grab it now. This is really cool too. I grew these for the first time from one of these packages last year. Loved them. They are the drumstick alliums, and they bloom in the summer. So it says late spring bloomer. For me, it bloomed probably the end of June, heading into July. Very pretty, and you get 20 of them for $9.98. They're very tall, so you want to plant them in the middle to the back of the border, and they'll kind of just hang out over the other shorter perennials. But very pretty. Plant them in groups. So you get these small bulbs like you see here, and there are 20 of them. I would say plant them in 4 groups of 5, no less than 5 per group, because that way they'll look more impactful planted in a little bouquet instead of planting them as singletons. The same thing goes for tulips. You don't want to plant them like soldiers down the walkway. You want to plant them in little bouquets, is what I call it. About 5 bulbs at least per group. And some proven winners bulbs. These have been showing up here at the box store for the last couple of years. They have some really pretty combinations. So for $14.98, how many bulbs do you get? Let's see, 12 tulips. So it must be like 6 and 6. But the colors are stunning together. Look at that. This is called the Spring Flames blend. They also have the watercolor blend, which is really pretty. And then the Radiance blend, which looks like those ripped fabric edges, right? Raw edges. And the Picnic blend, the Double Sorbet, and they also have some daffodils. So they have the Morning Sunrise blend, and you get 12 daffodils for $14.98. And the Firelight blend. Looks like some doubles and some singles. And when I say doubles and singles, I mean the ruffly ones with a mix of the traditional trumpet style. They also have this Golden Meadow blend. You are going to plant spring blooming bulbs this fall. Add some bone meal to your planting hole. You can get any kind. This one is $9.98 for the Vigoro here at the Home Depot. They also have the Espoma bone meal, and these are $12.98. But it really helps those roots get going and growing, and you'll get bigger blooms in the spring, which is always a good thing. Well, that brings us to the end of the September inventory here at the Home Depot. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what my store has in stock, and I hope that you can find some of these varieties near you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one.